Why is there such a huge gap between what we think parenting is going to be and what it actually is?
If you want to feel included and together and equal, you have to start that conscious effort from the time that you are in hospital having the baby.
Why, when we have children, do we think it's going to bring us closer together, but often it really pushes us apart?
We are seeing change every single day, and that is fantastic. And I think we can't be fooled by these changes that we see and think, oh, we're equal.
What are the jobs of mums and dads now? What's a dad when we're no longer just providers? What's a mum when they often are?
For a long time, the only power that women had was power in the household. And so when that shifts and changes, women are going to try to subconsciously hold on to that. And if you're the one that brings the family joy every Christmas, and that's where your value is, and now you share that, it decreases your value.
What am I supposed to teach or model for my children when I've no idea what the world is going to look like in 5 years' time?
We need to be reflecting on, what are my belief systems, what are my values, what are the scripts that are existing that I'm living to that may not be true anymore. Like, who do I want to be as a parent?
Why did my parents seem to have loads of conviction about these things and I had absolutely none? In this podcast, I talk with experts from all around the world about these problems and hopefully get some wisdom, some insight, and maybe most importantly, some perspective, and find out what it takes to be a happier parent. I'm recording this in October, so knowing what I now know about the mental load, I know that now is the right time to start talking about Christmas. This week, I'm talking to Rachel Childs and Kate Mangino, the hosts of my new favourite podcast, Equalish. We talk about the benefits of being a manager and how men training themselves to do emotional labour can result in beautiful, strong connection. We talk about the joy we get from giving others joy at Christmas, but also why it can be so hard to break into the pack of women who traditionally take charge of it. We also get into a huge question for me, which is, can we really choose to feel shame in areas where we don't instinctively feel ashamed? I love this conversation, and it changed the way I'm looking at my Christmas, but also the principles that I'm going to be using all year round. I hope it helps you too. I started doing this by reading books written by mums about motherhood. And a lot of them are very gendered in their titles, or in, like, for example, Fair Play is written with the assumption that the reader is a woman, right? Yeah. You've both deliberately stayed away from that. Kate, in your book, Equal Partnership, you know, so often gender roles hurt men too is an afterthought. It'll come in like chapter 11 and you kick off with it right away. And then Rachel, I would say your book is actually about taking a lot of these things that live as assumptions in our heads and kind of forcing them out into the open through a way to have conversations around them. And then you've got this amazing podcast. It's now my favorite podcast. I'm sorry, this Jungian life, I still love you, but I love Equalish. Where, you know, I feel you set out your store. Your first 3 episodes, 2 guests are dads. Talk to me about what's changed today. I think the role of dad has changed enormously, even since I first became a father 16 years. Kate, your book suggests I might be perceiving that a bit wrong. Just talk to me about where you think we are.
Well, first of all, thank you for noticing that. And yes, it was absolutely intentional for both of us. And I think that it's sort of a combination of where we are socially. I could have written this book 20 years ago, and I don't think it would have landed. I've worked in gender equality for 20 years. I have a master's and a PhD, and I've done this work sort of technically, so to speak. And for a long time, we used the word gender, but we really meant women and girls. And this really continued through 2012, 2014. When I started my career in the early 2000s, we all said we care about gender, but we were really just saying we care about women and girls. And it really wasn't until masculinities started to take hold and we started to really think, wait a minute, gender affects all of us. We are all negatively impacted. And if we want to make any headway in equality, it's going to require all of us to be there. There are people that talk about allyship. I think that's great. I don't have a problem with that. But I really think that asking someone to change their life for the benefit of someone else, doesn't work as often as someone changing because it benefits themselves. I think there's a lot of self-motivation. I think there's a lot of selfishness in being equal. And that's what I wanted to capture in my book, because I just didn't think that story was being told.
I think in the UK in particular, there's been so much conversation around dads and more vocal conversation around dads in the last 2-3 years, which is creating a movement for change for dads. So I came at the position of we need to have this conversation as a whole, not just about women anymore, because of my previous career in diversity and inclusion, in building mentoring and sponsorship programs largely for women, and in the end getting incredibly frustrated because we were sitting in an echo chamber and not creating change in organizations.
Does that answer your question, Alex?
Well, no, sorry.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
No, sorry. It's an amazing point, I guess, and as to why you've done that. I guess I'm looking for a description of what we think the male role is right now. What do dads do? Like, what do you see happening? Like, what are the ideals that dads are living up to?
Where we are right now is very different than we were 20 or 30 years ago. We have made great progress. You see dads on the playground. You see dads in the, Tesco aisles with baby Bjorns on their tummies and getting we are seeing change every single day, and that is fantastic. And I think we can't be fooled by these changes that we see and think, oh, we're equal. We have made great progress and we have longer to go. What I see as the most common situation in a mixed sex couple is they are sharing physical tasks. They are sharing cooking the dinner. They are sharing drop off the kids at school. They're sharing laundry. The cognitive labor, the thinking work, still falls on one person over the other. And the emotional labor, the feeling stuff, is still falling on one person. And that unless we're super intentional about it and we say to each other, we want to be different in our household, we're not going to change by default. The default is that one person is going to pick up about 2/3 of the work and one person is going to have about 1/3.
Could you give us your shoe store analogy? I think that's a really good way of understanding that from your book. Yeah, which you can't remember. I can see by your face. No.
Shoe store.
Shoe store. You talk about the difference of this kind of 65-35 split being, if you move that through to an analogy of a shoe store with a regional manager, even if
I can do that. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Alex.
That's all right.
Yes. So I often like to take it into a workplace because I think it just gives us a different perspective. Imagine a manager of a shoe store and what that manager has to do. You are balancing your employees. You're making sure paychecks are paid. You have to figure out what to do when someone's sick. You have to check inventory. You have to restock when inventory gets low. You have to make sure that you're carrying the coolest shoes for back to school so that you're competitive with, the other stores. Even when you clock out at the end of the day and you go home, you still have all this stuff on your mind thinking about what I have to do tomorrow. Your job never really ends. If you're a clerk at the shoe store, you show up at 8 o'clock, you log in, you sell shoes for 6 or 8 hours, and you go home. You're not taking that work with you. You don't care if the woman bought the shoes or didn't buy the shoes. You got your hourly wage. You are moving on. It's ludicrous to think we would pay those two people the same amount of money. One person does much different work and is going to earn a bigger salary, and one person is going to earn an hourly wage. We cannot apply that to a household dynamic. If one person is the cognitive laborer and is doing all the thinking work and all the feeling work and just doling out tasks, please unload the dishwasher, please take the kids to the birthday party, please pick up a pizza for dinner, that's basically being a store manager, and you're nowhere close to equality. If that's how your marriage works, that's awesome. What I'm tired of is people saying that's equality when it's not, because we're not sending the right message to our kids. We're sending the message of, hey, little guy, you can do 1/3 of the housework and claim equality. And hey, daughter, you're going to have to do 2/3 of the work and not get credit for it. And I don't think that's fair. I think if we have an imbalance, let's at least call a spade and say it out loud.
Yeah, and then going back actually to your first point, which was, let's talk about the benefits of being the manager, right?
Yeah.
Because we seem
Yeah.
to be locked in this cognitive labor, emotional labor is really, really hard, which it is. We'll come on to why. Women don't want to do it anymore, so men, you have to do it now, to be fair. But actually, there's a whole series of benefits to that. But I think maybe before we get on to the kind of what's good about it, what's bad about that situation, you know, in your book, Kate, at the beginning, you had some kind of quotes from men, and one of them that jumped out at me was this guy saying, you know, I didn't get married to be served. You know, I married to be in service. But I was like, what? Like, that is not what it felt like to me, having young children. You know, I remember kind of having 1 or 2 children on me and my wife kind of summoning me from like a room upstairs and me kind of like, wow, God, like, you know, going up, and then she'd list like this kind of the bunch of stuff that she wanted to do. And I was like, what? Sorry, what's happened? Like, do you want me to, are we in Game of Thrones? Do you want me to take a knee whilst you kind of deliver this edict? Like, and it was such a bad situation for both of us, this kind of manager drone thing. And I was like,
it's
what?
not sexy.
It's not good. Like, we were both furious with it. Neither of us wanted those roles. And as you say, like, unless we are mindful of it, they will just sneak up on us.
Exactly.
And then, Rachel, what you do with your book is you're like, you can get to this before you have kids, like before the birth, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, a big part of my mission is like all of these conversations need to happen and be formally part of every single antenatal program that exists. Like right now, we are so focused on, in antenatal programs, what drugs should you have? Like, how do you want to give birth? Create your labor plan, and, you know, what do you pack in the hospital bag? Nobody is talking about what actually happens after the birth. Like, how do you support one another? How do you give the confidence to dads to take paternity leave and assure them that it's okay to do that and they should do that, and empower and equip them to do it, particularly if organizations are being a bit crap about offering it? Like, there are so many important conversations to have before the baby is born. Granted, it's also a very overwhelming time. There is a limit to what you can talk about, but I think it's really important to just open our awareness to the fact that society is biased. The NHS, the National Health Service, is biased. Society is actively pushing dads away still. If you want to feel included and together and equal, you have to start that conscious effort from the time that you are in hospital having the baby, and that takes a lot of conscious effort to be able to do that.
People think it's just us. It's just us in our home and how we work with our partner. It's the system. It's everything. It's the hospital. It's the teachers. It's the daycare people. It's your pediatrician. It's your in-laws. It's the entire care system.
To take that a step further from it not just being about making sure a mum isn't overwhelmed, but what's available to dads who fully start to inhabit this kind of world of emotional labor, right? Caregiving, right? We're talking about deeply caring for other people in a way that I've never been trained to do, and no one's ever told me was good or manly, right? Like, I think it's, you know, when I'm fascinated by where all these ideals come from, and I'm like, I look at the movies I grew up with good dads, and the good dads took their kids to the ball game, right? Or they played with their kids, or they goofed around, right? They were fun, and they showed up. Like every Christmas movie ever is a man realizing that, oh, my family can be as important as work, right? And that's the kind of that's a very simple level that kind of dad guilt lives on. So let's talk about what is in it to be, as you call it, Kate, the noticer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that question that you asked earlier. I'd love to go back to it, Alex. What's the benefit of being that store manager? Why is everyone not an hourly employee? What's the benefit of being the manager? Now, in a work situation, you get paid more, but there's so many other benefits to it. So, okay, let me go back to, I'm trying to answer your two questions at once. The noticer,
I think it's the same question.
It's the same question. Okay. So I talk about the noticer in my book as the person who just notices what has to be done. You don't have to be told that there's a load of dry clothes in the laundry and it needs to be folded and put away and put in kids' drawers. You notice that your kids aren't eating a certain kind of cereal anymore, so you switch to something else. It's the anticipation of needs, the noticing what's happening in your house and making small shifts and changes all the time to meet the needs of your family. And we socialize girls to notice. And we socialize girls that they are going to be rewarded and valued for that noticing. And we do not raise little boys to notice. And we don't teach boys that noticing is masculine or that you're going to benefit from noticing. No one ever tells you when you're 15 that your wife is going to find it incredibly hot if you do the laundry without being asked, right? That's not any conversation that we're having. And so I think we not
totally
only
missing from every porno I've ever watched.
Totally missing from, but like laundry porn could absolutely be a thing.
Laundry porn is real porn. Let's start a campaign.
I just think we can't have this conversation about couples without also linking in the way that we're raising kids, because a lot of it is socialized behavior. And you're right, you weren't trained to care in that way. That wasn't part of your upbringing. So you're like learning it in real time when you have an infant in your hands and you have to figure it out. And that's what a lot of dads are faced with. But we could do better than that.
The minute I read that in your book, Kate, when I first read your book, I immediately implemented noticing time at home. I was like, right, kids, we're going to start doing a new thing every day. We're going to have 5 minutes noticing time. And they're sick of me saying, I'm noticing that this is still on the table.
Did it work? I'm curious. Did it work in your house?
It's habits, isn't it? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But they're getting there. They do enjoy the forced noticing time, and we're like, right, we're going to go and do it. We're going to notice what's missed, what's out, and we're just going to put it away. Let's go, and then set the timer and just do it.
Yeah, we do family noticing time most often now. We'll just be like when the house is an absolute mess and it's Saturday morning and you're like, I can't live here. Set the timer for an hour and all four of us have to notice, and then they don't feel like, they are oppressed. They feel like it's a family activity.
So what you've done there, Rachel, is tied that noticing to mess, which is my big family row. I'm fascinated because Kate says she's the messy one. But actually the noticing in your book isn't just about mess. It's kind of, you give the example of sorting out your kid's school bag and taping up their binders and sharpening all their pencils and these lovely displays of love. I want to tie this into Christmas.
Okay.
Because just to say, right, this is mid-October. I've now been kind of reading these books and trying to kind of get my head around all this stuff for 2 years. 2 Christmases now have gone by where, like, first year I was like, right, it's early December. What are we doing for Christmas? I'm all in. And my wife's like, Christmas is sorted, you arsehole. I'm planning the summer holiday, right? Like, and then last Christmas I was like, mid-November. And she's like, no, you've missed it again. All right. So this is going to be the Christmas episode. And so I'm like, okay, I want to try and deal with this idea that basically you are the one who is going to be judged on how our Christmas looks. So for me, that means that I'm not going to have the final say. I'm not actually going to be the manager, the store manager on this bit. What are the areas which you can hand over to me without having this kind of emotional panic around it, right? That because you're going to be judged. And so one of the things that she's given me, which is pure emotional labor, is the fact that there's only a certain number of people who can come to our house for Christmas. I've got to manage the family members and when they can come. And I was like, that's awful. That's a terrible job. She's like,
yeah, and you're going to do it. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's really interesting that as men, I see doing more and more housework, which actually costs us nothing. It really fits into that kind of masculine, good man, work hard. Right. I can do more stuff. Right. That's kind of quite easy. It's low hanging fruit. Whereas this kind of managing of other people, which is, I think it's inherently stressful, but then there are huge rewards. As a result of that, I've ended up having a conversation with my mother about how Christmas needed to run that I've been putting off for 5 years as a result of a variety of Christmas arguments that we've had in the past. And it's that, we're gonna have that talk, and I'm, the relief. I feel amazing. Tell me, what are the other things that we can get men to do that they're gonna find rewarding? And talk to me about Christmas.
Hey, so Alex, you gave us a heads up. I woke up this morning to an email from you saying, I'd like to talk about Christmas. So the first thing I did as I'm making my morning tea is I turn to my husband and I say, talk to me about Christmas. What's in it for you? Why? Because my husband takes gift buying very seriously, and he takes the lead on gifts. It started with the kids, and now it's actually kind of gone to other members of the family as well. And he said, there is nothing cooler. The feeling that you feel when you picked out something that lights up someone's face, when they open up that gift and you were the one that thought of it and went out and found it and you wrapped it. And even if the wrapping is clumsy, you did it with your own 2 hands. And he said, it feels phenomenal. And he's like, and you're going to miss sometimes. And we had a laugh over the fact that he bought our kids these matching T-shirts a couple years ago. And he was so excited about this gift. They were like specially ordered. They were so ugly.
I can't take it.
They were so ugly. And the kids opened it and they were like, oh, thanks, Dad. And they never wore them. I don't even think they ever got washed. They've never come through the laundry. I don't know where they are anymore. Probably Goodwill. And Evan's like, that hurt. So you have to know you're going to fail once in a while, and you have to be ready for it, and that's okay. But you're also going to succeed. You're also going to nail the gift. You're going to make your dad super happy. You're going to make your kids super happy. And it could be through a meal. It doesn't have to be a wrapped gift. It could be the way you bring people together, or that, your mom saying, oh, I've wanted to do Christmas like this my whole life, but no one's asked me what I wanted. It's bringing joy to other people that brings joy to you. That's kind of, I think, the Christmas spirit. But I mean, that sounds very cheesy, but that's honestly what, the answer was. Do you think that's enough for you, Alex? I'm curious, is bringing joy to others, is that enough?
I want to maybe bring it back to, again, this idea that we're all quite selfish. And so there you've got, gifts being part of, I would say, your husband's love language. And my wife and I talking, we had this conversation where she was like, this Christmas, let's just go to lots of restaurants. Because I love, and she started to list all these brilliant meals that we've had, like the 5 of us. And they are always brilliant. I was like, God, yeah, that was amazing. They're not the things that spring to mind for me. The things that spring to mind are when we go camping and when we go to gigs and there's a festival that we go to. And she was like, all the things that you've listed are things that you've organized. You've done the conception and the planning. You've researched. You've taken the risk, as your husband did with the T-shirts. If it goes wrong, it would have been on me. And then they're the things I remember. And I can take on the happiness of those memories. I can feel it again in my body. So it's kind of like we don't
get... Because you owned them, right?
Because I owned them. And there was some struggle.
Experience.
There was some struggle.
Yeah.
right, in making them. So I think that's kind of what I take from what your husband, it's like the more we put ourselves on the line emotionally and try and get things right, we're building a future of memories.
Christmas is, hopefully for families, particularly with young children, there is so much joy and excitement and magic that can be part of that experience, as well as complicated family dynamics and visits for many households as well. But I think the biggest opportunity with Christmas, particularly for dads, is like that reflecting on the question, like, do you want to be a recipient of that joy, or do you want to help to be the one that is creating that joy? And I think that kind of links to the things that you remember, Alex. Like, you remember those experiences where you were actively creating joy within the family. And Christmas is that opportunity where there is so much space for magic and joy and togetherness, if you're willing to be part of actively creating those moments. And again, I think for me, it comes down to some of those core, like, early conversations as a couple around, your values, your meaning. What does that look like in terms of the traditions that are going to be important for you as a family? And what are you then bringing to those? And whether it's linking to your love languages, like the things that you appreciate, the things that made you happy kind of growing up at Christmas time, what were the traditions that you want to maintain, and own it? Because actually that brings you joy, like, if you're helping to create it within your family. And sometimes the converse of that is yes, and I might have to have some sticky conversations with my mum to make sure that this Christmas can be joyful. And maybe there's some new boundaries, maybe there's some tricky conversations that we need to have. But actually, what is it that I need to do so that we can hold as much joy as possible?
So I want to hit you with a couple of things that get in the way of that. Okay, we said there beautifully kind of what's in it. Do you want to be a passenger who's along for the ride of Christmas, or do you want to be driving that magic bus? It's amazing. Yep.
You can see the Coca-Cola advert, can't you?
I know. I was thinking night bus. I was like, I was like on a Harry Potter spot.
Yeah, I think we'll get more money for mentioning Coca-Cola. So well done there. A lot of the outrage I come across online is basically saying, why? How have we got to this situation where women are working and they're doing all these things? And I understand the outrage, but actually, in some ways, I find it less surprising that if we look 70 years ago, the only place that women were able to express themselves or had any power at all was in the home. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that power, as power always is, has been fiercely guarded. And I really think of this around Christmas time, that often the decisions and the things we are talking about now are made by groups of women. There'll be like all on a WhatsApp group together, or, my mum wants to talk to Eloise about it. Not sort of in a, this is our cross to bear, but also as a way to connect with her daughter-in-law in a way that she thinks is kind of good and proper. And I also think Christmas is the time where I see the most eye rolling at men and, cat-handed attempts to do whatever. There's this real, which I get it. We can laugh at men because it's kind of punching up. But actually, the punchline of that joke depends on us saying that women are really better at kind of drudgery. It's like, it's not actually a good joke for women that men are all useless at domestic stuff.
Yeah.
So how do it feels like men sometimes have to break in to those worlds.
I think, so I'm going to put in a shameless plug we have an upcoming episode completely devoted to gatekeeping with an amazing academic, Sarah Shapi Sullivan. I think this is a gatekeeping issue. I think that gatekeeping happens, and you're right, for a long time, the only power that women had was power in the household. And so when that shifts and changes, women are going to try to subconsciously hold on to that. Because if you only have power in the home and you give that up, what do you have left? And if you're the one that brings the family joy every Christmas and that's where your value is, and now you share that, it decreases your value. And I don't think people are making that intentional decision, but I think it's a feeling that just kind of happens in the back of our minds. That's why it needs to be a conversation. That's why you have to kind of tackle it and say things out loud, not just make changes in your relationship, but say it out loud. Let's share the value of Christmas. Let's share the value of earning income. Let's share, let's talk about all the ways that we are taking care of our family together. Because I do think that women guard holidays. They protect things. They guard Halloween costumes, that's a big thing coming up in the States very soon. The kids' first day of school outfit, whatever it is, there's all of these calendar events throughout the year. And women are raised to think that our value of what we bring to the family is how well we do with all of these events. So if we pass them off and share them, what do we have left?
We have parented and lived in villages for, hundreds of years. Like, women have always worked in community, and so the pack that you're talking about, your mum wants to speak to your wife. Like, it's the tradition, isn't it? Like, it's the same when a baby's born and all the mums and the aunties come together and sit around in a circle and share. We'll give the cabbage leaves or put the cabbage leaves in the freezer and help to share tips. And it's that same thing. It's like the way that women convene to support one another around, to support one another. Support. But so much of that, support. So much
Why
of that.
did you do that? Why did you do that?
Oh, because there's so much competition in the pack as well. There's so much who's making the better roast and who does it. It's not just, I think there's something, an air of support, but it's not always, we don't always feel supported.
Thanks for being honest about that. That was awesome.
Yeah. You can see it in all the housewives of programs, can't you? It's
fill
all
in the blank. Exactly.
yeah. But that's also. So then, when you're talking about Christmas, the traditions exist because they're the role models that have existed for, the last 100+ years, and those traditions have been held very tightly. And we are the generation that is trying to shift that, and to change traditions takes time. And it's that consciousness, it's the realizing it's happening, and it's that ability to then together as a couple say, oh, this is how we're doing it differently. That's hard to do.
It's hard.
And it's going to take, and it will take another, however many years to change it. But the more that we can start to say those things together now, again, it's that role modeling to our children. So it's kind of like, let's work together to break the pack and role model to our children the thing that we want to do differently, because then when we're the ones that leading the pack as grandparents, we're going to be the ones that are kind of more inclusive, and it's not just going to be the harem of women sitting together in the kitchen while the dads are in the living room watching football.
Right, but then also to come back to the kind of benefit from God, it's so good, because this is why you've got to have a podcast for this stuff, and social media doesn't work because that is so complicated. There's the judgment, there's competitiveness, but there is overall benefit there to doing it. So it's so complex. But when you mention the grandparents, I think another thing we see at Christmas, we've all got one in one of our families somewhere, is an older man who basically has been, it's a comedic trope, right? But his role has been diminished and diminished and diminished until he's just eye rolled at. His wife is like, he's useless. The guy he literally can't do anything for himself anymore.
Yeah.
He's been infantilized, and she's kind of locked herself into a caring role for all eternity. And it's like, you do not want to be that guy.
No.
Your wife doesn't want to be that woman. Don't let it happen.
But take it back to its root, Alex. There is a gender norm that is at the root of all of these ideas that we have, that women are caregivers and men are breadwinners. But caregiving is a lifelong job, and breadwinning ends. At some point, you're going to retire. You're not going to work anymore. And so if you don't take on some caregiving roles, Does your value end when you retire? That poor guy, I mean, he's annoying. We all know him. We all have one, as you said. And I also have empathy for that because he was raised to think that his value in the family was working. And ever since he retired, what does he bring? And he doesn't even know how to contribute anymore. So there's another benefit right there. If you want your life to continue, we're living so long now, 80, 85, 90. If you want your life to have quality until the last day, as opposed to ending when you retire at 65, step up now, form those relationships, because Christmas is a cycle. You bring joy to other people, and that brings you immediate joy. But then that person feels seen, feels heard, feels important, feels respected. It forms a deeper relationship. So they come to you with a problem or good news, or they want you to be part of their holiday, or they want you to be part of their celebration. And then that builds the relationship stronger. So Christmas, for a lot of families, it's like the grand King Poobah of holidays, and there's so much emotion tied up in it. But the joy that you can build can last much longer than 1 or 2 days or a season.
Yeah, and I feel like we're talking about principles that we can then feed into our lives all year round.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
I want to do a plug for you. If you want to hear a man talking powerfully and stridently about the shitty hand that men in this generation have been dealt, whilst in the same breath advocating for us taking personal responsibility, your third episode with Marvin Harrison it was unbelievable. It was so good. I really encourage everyone to go out and listen to that episode 3.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And also, I just checked, Sarah Shoppy Sullivan's episode on maternal gatekeeping is coming out on the 10th of November. For us, it's so important to have the conversation that is both sides of the coin, the maternal gatekeeping and what are we doing? And then how do you share the emotional labour? I think just leading on what Kate was saying there about the men in our families that exist. I heard a really powerful talk from a dad talking about his relationship with his children, and he didn't have one, and he didn't have that ability for his teenager to be able to come to him and have a relationship where they could have a real conversation, because he hadn't put the time in, because he hadn't learnt how to be emotionally vulnerable, to be able to have a conversation that didn't always result in solving a problem, but created a space where he could just be present and his teenager could just share their experiences and troubles and struggles in a safe way. And this is what caregiving brings, because for many dads, let's be honest, you don't have the role models. Your dad was out at work. It was your mum that was the caregiver, the one that was the emotional support, the one that was there with the hugs, the one that was there to say, like, tell me how you're hurt and how let's like work it through together. Like, not many men have got dads who did that for them. And learning that skill to be able to be that dad for your children is really hard. It's probably one of the hardest skills to learn, actually, for many dads, to build that emotional connection. And we know that's also where the crux of the challenges is in a lot of relationships is not having that emotional connection. And as Molly Millwood said in our first episode, the number one thing that people want in their relationship is to feel seen, is to feel heard. And that's what kids want too. And the best way to learn how to do that is to be a dad that is present, that is there, that is providing that emotional support beyond trying to do discipline, telling your children to be good, to follow rules, to, pick themselves up after they've had a fall. Like, let them be there when they're crying to help them resolve it.
I think your book, Rachel, and it talks about male and female communication, things that men do, things that women do, and it's like, I mean, you're talking about talking to partners, but it's like, don't rush straight to solutions.
Yeah.
And that is so good with kids. And I would just do it instinctively. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Oh, well, I give up. Do you know what I mean? It's like, actually, that's not what you want me for. You don't I don't need to do
No,
that.
not at
It's
all.
not going to help
Yeah.
you.
We have a standard practice in our house, which if a kid comes to us, sometimes if we get confused, we'll just immediately say, do you just need to vent or do you want me to fix it? And that you just ask straight out. And then 9 times out of 10, 19 out of 20, my daughter will say, no, I'm just venting. I can fix it myself. I just need you to listen to me. And then it's like, oh, the pressure's off. I can just sit back and listen. And sometimes she vents for 6 minutes and sometimes it's 60. But when she's done, she's like, okay, I'm good now. I'll see you later. And she goes off and you don't have to do anything. That's all she needed.
Yeah, because you cleared that up at the beginning, now I can properly listen. And I'm not.
I'm not problem solving for you. And that's what we're doing as parents, aren't we? We're trying to teach them to problem solve for themselves. So 2 birds, 1 stone.
I want to bring together some things that we've touched on. That at the start, you said for Kate, you said for a long time, gender there's meant girls, and I think for a long time, person has meant man. Right, that's kind of what patriarchy is. Right, it's a kind of an assumption of maleness. Going back to that, women's power was traditionally just lived in the home. For a long time, parent has meant mum. And that's what we meant by parent. And I think in the same way that we're like, I would describe what you're talking about there, Rachel, is that being present, that being emotionally present. I'm gonna call them maternal because I like it. It just helps me. And we're taking sort of good things from the maternal there. I think we've ignored the good things that the paternal brings, and that the parenting voice has become overwhelmingly maternal. And that I thought what Molly Millwood said in your first episode, that dads have been untouched by the changes in intensive parenting. There's this part of me that's like, good. like that's amazing. Like, come over here, guys. The water's fine. Like, it's like,
we don't need to go to that length. Can we dial it back a little bit?
Yeah. I was talking with some mates about why it's easier when their wives go away. This is something that I've seen really change in the last kind of 5 years, is that mums will go on holiday and not either reject that judgment or just go anyway. And there's some elements of that, talking to guys, where they're like, it's easier when they're away. And one of those is unquestionably that they're benefiting from emotional and invisible labor and systems that their wives have put in place.
Yes.
But then there's another thing that I think is really interesting, which is because we haven't had those intensive parenting messages aimed at us. And my mate was saying, like, I have to make my kid food. My kid doesn't like it when I put him down. He fusses. He might cry a bit. I'm like, it's all right. I'm going to make your food and then I'm going to pick you up. When it's my wife trying to make the food, it's like, I can't. You've got to take him, because it's like been taught that any moment of discomfort from a child is bad. It can't be tolerated. It's like, it's really, really hard. It's really, really, really hard being a mum right now. Can we learn something from dads?
I think you're completely right, that because there are so many pressures on women around the intensive parenting, that maybe like we do feel guilty when we put the baby down and they're crying, and we just feel like we need to pick it up again. And dads are much more able to just be quite relaxed about that in a different way.
But I also think in a way that my mum would have been. Do you see what I mean? I don't necessarily think it's masculine. I just think we haven't taken on these new ideals.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I don't disagree with anything you've said. I just want to clarify that if men and women behave differently, it's not because of our DNA. It's because of the way we've been raised and socialized. And I think there's all different kinds of great ways to parent. And if right now fathers haven't felt the the pressure of intensive parenting. Let's use that. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to be true in 10 or 20 or 30 years because of the way
I often think
maybe
whether things are socialized or not, it doesn't really matter in a sense, because socialization overcomes everything else. Like it always is the most powerful one.
For
so
sure.
I guess
as long
I'm
as
just
we clarify,
about...
I just don't want anyone to think that that's an excuse that you can't change. If you ever want to change, if you want to lean into caregiving, if you want to be a different parent, you have self-agency to do that. You're not limited by your biology.
In your example, can we please celebrate the mums going away for the weekend? And one of the big things that I talk about to couples, particularly during parental leave, is like, because my husband often says the kids would always go down much easier when I wasn't in the house at bedtime. If we would try and do it together, it was a nightmare. But it was just much easier if it was one of us, because they'd start playing up. And this is where, particularly in the first year, where the kind of maternal guilt can be rising quite high because of hormones and society's expectations. I think there needs to be more vocal conversations to say, mums, leave the house. Just leave.
It's actually good for your family.
It's better for your family if you go out and go for a run, do exercise, go for a weekend away if you can in the first year. Brilliant. Let dads learn, have space on their own, find your own techniques and habits, and the kids will be better for it.
Well, so now we're so separate from our wider families.
Yeah.
It's such a physical thing having a 1-year-old. My physical strength means I am less battered, by carrying this kind of giant, my kids are all huge, just carrying this kind of lump or lumps around. It's just less of a big deal for me.
Yeah.
There's a big question that I have around shame, and I'm changing my opinion on it week to week. But I think Eloise and we were talking about mess and how the house should look, and where we actually got to was no, I'm doing it. I can see that you want it this way. So no, I don't. I don't want you to do it for me. I want you to do it because where we actually got to was, I was like, right, what you're saying is you want me to feel the same shame that you feel.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't. That's not going to happen. I don't know if anyone would choose shame, because it'd be like sticking your hand in a fire. It's just disgusting feeling. But also, can we? And then there's this brilliant quote in your book, Kate, where you say, one cannot accept shame for something we do not feel we are supposed to do. And I just wanted to kind of drill down into that, because your choice of words, you've said one cannot accept shame rather than feel. Go on. I'm really... And if you're like, Alex, sorry, I wasn't really thinking about it.
Oh, no. Bless you. I mean, anyone who's written a book, you stress over every sentence, right? I mean, every sentence is like, well, I stressed over every single sentence. So when someone actually reads it and they're like, hey, this is a good sentence, thank you. So you just made my day. Okay, so first of all, I just want to separate quickly. Guilt is something that you did. Guilt is usually tied to an action, whereas shame is often tied to who we are. So when I use the word shame, it's tied to our identity and who we are as an individual, just to clarify that. And I believe that shame has to be accepted to work. If you try to shame me because I don't cook, I don't care. I'm not going to accept that shame because I don't believe it. And it took me some years to work through that. And now I'm okay with it. I will just kind of laugh it off. I don't need to cook. That's my husband's job. Not everyone. I set a beautiful table. I can buy lovely flowers and I will clean the bathroom for you if we have guests. But I'm not going to cook and I'm not going to accept the shame that I don't. I think that it's something that you can work through. you're right, Alex, you might never feel that shame, but I think your partner has the ability to reject it.
It's interesting, though, you say, just to get down into it,
Uh-huh.
that you say one cannot accept. But I think there's a suggestion there of will not with what you were saying. That there's some kind of in the cooking thing, right? Are you not saying there, no, I won't have that? Not that it's not possible.
Can you rephrase that? The cannot, how would you rephrase the sentence? You think it should be a will not a cannot?
I think cannot is right. It's not possible. I got from your example that you were saying I've worked through it, that there's some kind of decision in there. No, I won't take that shame on.
I think it's both. Isn't it both?
What do you think, Rachel?
I think it's very hard to accept shame for something that isn't connected to your identity, that isn't connected to your belief system, because it's a step removed from your definition of self. And so if you are a step removed from being the person responsible for doing the cooking, then how can you feel shame if it's not been done? Because it's not part of yourself, your identity, your responsibility. You might feel guilty that your partner would have liked some more support in it, or you might feel guilt, but you can't put shame on somebody.
And so that goes back to how we define femininity, masculinity, mother, father, parent. If you think about what we attach to those identities, that can change over time, right? Maybe at 10 years old, we thought being a good mother meant putting a hot meal on the table every night. But at 40, we've evolved to think it's different. So I think, I don't know if it's cannot or will not. Maybe it's more about what Rachel was saying, that it's what we attribute to identity, what is a good mother, what is a good father.
Which would, if we go back to that sentence, one cannot accept shame for something we do not feel we are supposed to do. We can change what we feel we are supposed to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cut. Nailed it.
Yes.
And I think that's really interesting, because it's like I do feel shame now when I have to leave the house in a rush and the kitchen is a mess, because that is my job. And I've internalized that this is something that I'm supposed to do. So by having the kind of conversations that you talk about in your book, Rachel, we can come together and agree. A big, amazing bit of your book is about values, right? It's like, who are we? Who's this family? My family, we're fun, loving rule breakers. So it's like, and I love that. I think it's so important to be like, who are we as a couple? And then as your kids get older, who are we as a family? And then you can be like, well, are people who follow through on these values, are they supposed to do this?
And I think this is such a huge thing that we underestimate, whether it's to do in parenthood, our relationships, or just generally like in adulthood, is we underestimate the amount of scripts that exist within our identity, within our sense of self, that may no longer be fit for purpose. And so there might be a lot of shame that we hold about what we have or haven't achieved, or who we are or aren't as humans, because of these scripts that were created in our belief system from very early on, and we haven't challenged them. And because parenthood is such a huge transformational moment, it's a real, this is like, we need to be reflecting on, what are my belief systems, what are my values, what are the scripts that are existing that I'm living to that may not be true anymore. Like, who do I want to be as a parent? Who do I want to be as a partner? What's the script I want to write? Because I believe this is who I want to be. And therefore, what is maybe some shame or guilt I need to let go of, because that's not serving me. it's not my identity. It's not what I want to live by anymore. And we can rewrite that, but it takes work and effort.
Wow. Such a beautiful final thought from Rachel there. Rachel Childs' book is Beyond Baby Talk. Kate Mangino's book is called Equal Partners. Their podcast is Equalish, and if I haven't mentioned, I think it's really very good. They are currently doing a crowdfunding project for the podcast, and I will put a link in the show notes. Please follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Be a Happier Parent, and videos of these episodes are available on my YouTube channel at Alex in Dadland. I look forward to seeing you all next week.